Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Glue Stick channel. Amanda Mercer asked me, also, do you have any pointers on making your own weird monsters? In my campaign, there will be a mad wizard trying to make the most powerful monster. I started to answer this question and it turned into something more like a blog post. I started just sort of going off on monster design in general and encounter design and realized that I'm really in a mood to talk about how I design encounters and things like that, or the general theories and stuff. For people who are starting out with Dungeons & Dragons, this is probably a very good video to watch. I wanted to talk about creature design, monster design, and things to keep in mind when homebrewing your own monsters, because in a general survey on my community channel and my tab on YouTube here, I asked people about whether they used the system as it was found in the Dungeon Master's Guide for calculating the challenge rating of their monsters and things like that. Challenge ratings, for the most part, for people who play Dungeons & Dragons, is more of a guideline than a real system that they stick to and adhere to. Some people who are designing creatures and things on a regular basis don't put a lot of stock in the challenge ratings as they're listed in the book there. It is a system that you can follow, and it's okay to sort of start off with that, but it's a little bit involved, and people who make monsters for the games for practical reasons don't really follow it extremely strictly. The majority of people who homebrew their own creatures just sort of wing it, and they follow the same general design guidelines, which I'm going to lay down for you now. So when you're calculating your monster, what I generally advise you to do is start off with a base creature, some sort of monster which fits the general shape, size, and statistics of the creature that you want this thing to end up looking like. So if it basically looks like a big bear-like monster, or it's like a giant ape, or it's like an aquatic whale-like creature or something like that, like if you're starting off with a leviathan, maybe start off with a giant whale or something like that. And then from there you look at the armor class and the hit points, and that's how long that thing's going to last in battle, really. That's its stock of how many rounds it's going to take for the adventurers to whittle that thing down. Armor class in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is not hugely important. Generally speaking, things are more hittable by a greater range of adventurers, and once you get past level 5 or 6 or 7 or so, you're going to be able to hit most things that you aim for, because the armor classes aren't going to be much higher than 20 ever. So generally speaking, the adventurers are going to be able to hit things, and those things are probably going to be able to hit the adventurers unless the adventurers are designed in such a way as to be almost impregnable. So this is like your frontline paladins who are completely stocked up on magical armor and shields and things like that. But in the background, your squishies, your cloth wearing wizards and your rogues and things like that are going to be a lot more vulnerable to getting hit by these things. So it's in their best interest to sort of stay out of the way and stay in the background, or just come in and hit them occasionally and then skip away again. Or if you've got a creature if you've got an adventurer like a barbarian, they're really designed to come in, risk everything, but have the dexterity and things to just sort of nimbly dodge out of the way without being encumbered with a lot of armor, which can work or not work. All things considered, it's an exciting class to play. But with the monsters, really they're either designed around mobility, but if you think about what the adventurers can do, the adventurers really have a lot of advantages on those monsters in regards to mobility and the ability to take cover, to work as a team and things like that. So it's really they're gonna kill that monster pretty quickly. If it's got a very low amount of hit points, it's designed to get a couple of hits in and then die quickly. If it's got a greater amount of hit points, it's really designed to stay there for a longer period of time. So hit points is a consideration of how long that creature has got in combat to get off its various attacks and special abilities and such, to put on a good show for those adventurers before it meets its inevitable demise. So next we're looking at what those features and powers of that creature are. The statistics and things for the attributes, the strength and dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom and charisma of the monster are not overly important, apart from where it comes to things like making perception checks, saving throws, those sort of things against specific things that the adventurers are throwing against them, or the capability of a creature to make some sort of a random check. And that will normally be, you want to pay attention to the strength and dexterity and constitution and wisdom and things when it comes to making saving throws or specific checks against a spell or something like that a wizard is throwing at them, for the most part, or a strength check against a fighter or something to escape a grapple or pin attack or something like that. Or if it needs to pick up something and throw it, for instance, you want to calculate what its strength is based on its size and things. So its size also has an influence on its armor class. The larger it is, the lower the armor class is going to be, because it's cumbersome and it's literally like hitting the side of a barn. Smaller creatures have a higher armor class just by default, but it's never going to be much higher than 20. 20 would be around your maximum for armor class, unless it's really concentrating on being an impregnable or extremely fast and difficult to hit target, which is very small. So then you look at the special abilities of the creature, and this will be special attacks it can make, and in regards to its longevity in the fight, when you come to things like damage resistance and damage immunity, you want to be reasonably sparing with those, and keep in mind that it's going to be a pretty hit and miss exercise with the damage resistance and damage immunities. It seems to be a big payoff for the creature, but in practical effect, it only really matters if, say, the wizard is throwing fireballs or something like that at this thing, and it's got resistance to fire, and the wizard doesn't realize that it's got resistance to fire. That effectively halves the amount of damage that the wizard is throwing at this thing, which makes it more of a threat for the frontline forces which are attacking this thing toe to toe. So the fighter is now attacking a creature which is getting less of damage incoming from the ranged attackers, for instance, but it's still going to be vulnerable to bows or sneak attacks from the row or something like that. So it's not a huge factor, and it's got a much bigger influence on the challenge rating of a creature than I think it really needs to have. But if on the other hand, if it's got damage immunity to something, and that just happens to be the entire loadout of your sorcerer or whatever, it can be quite critical and will really make that player think, what am I supposed to do in this fight? So it can have a hit and miss effect, but you don't want to give it resistance to everything. Just give it resistance to a few things, and be very sparing on its damage immunities as well, so that it really is a hit and miss, and sometimes the adventurers will have a single attack or so sort of thwarted in the middle of the fight, but without really shutting them down. So that's something to think about. Then you've got your mobility and the movement of the creature. Say if you give it a teleport or a fly ability, or it has the effect of turning invisible or something like that, or using darkness and it's got dark vision. Darkness and dark vision for creatures is really less important in 5th edition. I haven't had one adventuring party that hasn't had somebody with dark vision, and there's usually the ability to cast light spells and things like that, so I don't think they even check once in their backpack whether they've got a torch or a lantern or anything like that. It just doesn't come up, which may be a failing of 5th edition, I don't know. So the mobility of a creature for flight and things like that means that they can get out of the way of the melee attackers and things like that. They're still reasonably vulnerable to ranged attackers though, but this is the opportunity of creatures who have flight to take out ranged attackers and things, and particularly creatures with teleport ability. That really puts a huge amount of threat on your ranged attackers, your wizards and things like that, who would be sitting in the background, and then all of a sudden they've got a creature that can teleport 120 feet, which is right behind them, and all of a sudden the fighter who's 120 feet away is like, oops, now what do I do? Well, that's the thing to think about. You've giving them the ability to transport really quickly across the battlefield puts a massive amount of threat on those adventurers who've got a low armor class and are back in the background throwing ranged spells and stuff. So yeah, it can be a killer. Also, giving the creature the ability to paralyze, frighten, ensnare, trap, or otherwise put the kibosh on the attackers right in front of them. So a paralysis effect for anybody who's played using chulls or ghouls or other creatures like that can paralyze. The carrion crawlers and such are famous for a reason, is because paralysis effects are very, very potent against the melee attackers who are coming up against them. Because even if the DC for the saving throw is reasonably low, if they have to make that saving throw quite often, they're going to fail eventually. Everybody rolls ones, and in that particular case it can be brutal, because if they're right up against that creature and they fall unconscious in front of it, then that creature has the ability to kill them very quickly, long before anybody else has got a chance to react. So that's something to keep in mind. And then of course you've got other abilities, such as the ability to use terrain or call in allies and things like that, which can make fights very complicated very quickly. Now the other thing that I like to think about with encounter designs is look outside of the monster and think of the entire environment of that encounter as the creature that you're designing. So this is like lair effects and things like that are not just for big bad monsters. Therefore every single creature has got basically an encounter zone that they're fighting in, and that needs to be an exciting and dynamic place to have the fight in as well. Your encounter lair, your area, should be as much a part of your consideration of that fight as anything the creature can do. So we're talking about cover, movable terrain, difficult terrain, traps and things, elements which take place during the fight, so they add a sort of sense of urgency. Say you've got a slowly counting down clockwork lever at the end, and it's going to take somebody to get across there and shove a large iron bar into the clockwork cogs to stop some big bad thing happening in the environment. Say, for instance, a vial of alchemist fire is going to fall into a lake of oil, and then it's going to burst out and turn the entire place into an inferno, which is fine for the monster but very bad for everybody else. That's the sort of thing that can take one of the adventurers in that fight away from the combat, therefore that adds to the longevity of the monster and also reduces the amount of incoming damage that they're doing to that creature, in order for them to stop whatever is about to happen, which is going to be a very bad deal for everybody apart from the monster. So if you add elements like that into your fight, it becomes a very dynamic environment. The adventurers the players sitting around the table will be talking about who's going to do what. They may not be all concentrating their attacks on this creature, so the fight is going to last a little bit longer. It's going to be more memorable for sure, and it's going to have that sense of urgency and strategic sort of combat, which makes it very memorable. This is, in movies and things like that, very rarely is it just a fight against a bad guy. It's usually a fight against time as well as an obstacle, which is the threat of this bad guy as well. So you need to get to the hostage before the bomb blows up, but there's this goon in front of you that you need to take out first. So the longer it takes to do that, the more danger you're in the long run. So encounters and adventures and things like that really need to think about why that encounter is taking place and what effect it has psychologically on the players as well, and the general flow of the story as well. So it really, if it's just a sort of a random encounter in the middle of nowhere for no particular reason, then it's just an exercise in how fast can we kill this thing and what's it got on it. But if it's an encounter in a dynamic adventure with things that are going on and there's a sense of urgency and time involved, and then this monster drops out of nowhere, it really is a desperate fight against this thing where people can make reckless decisions, or they can overexpend their resources because they're trying to kill this thing as quickly as possible. So the wizard may use a fireball that otherwise they would have been saving for a rainy day because they need to get rid of this creature quickly, and all of a sudden, whoops, I didn't realize this thing's immune to fire, or it's got resistance to fire. I've just blown half of my resources on this thing for probably not a good reason, but it was a tactical decision at the time. So this is the sort of thing that makes the game quite interesting and gives that sense of urgency, and can occasionally make the players slap their forehead and go, I should have thought that through. So there you go. The other sort of considerations are the cosmetic sort of things for the creature. How horrific and fun is it to describe this creature to the player characters? Does it give a real sort of atmosphere to that encounter? Is the environment spooky and horrible? Does it play upon a primal fear like spiders or slimes, or perhaps losing control of your character's mind, or not being aware of what's going to happen next? Is it dark and murky? Do things come out of nowhere? Are there things that move through walls, or have a horrific sort of spooky horror feel to them? Or is it more sort of tooth and claw and savage and whoa, my character could get torn to pieces here? Or is it more like, this is annoying and the antics of this creature don't make any sense? Or is it playing with us and toying with us? Or is it just sort of something which is put here tragically that we have to kill, but it's really not its fault? Things like this sort of play into the general hubbub of the story, and can make for interesting adventures as well. You may even have them try not to kill a creature but subdue it just because it's not really its fault. So it was a poor and tortured guard animal, some drake or something, which has been chained to a castle wall and is fighting them just because it's hungry and tired and starving and abused, and really they feel bad for killing this thing, so they may not necessarily want to kill it. They may actually go out of their way to avoid killing this thing, which again adds to the urgency and stuff if there's other things they need to be getting to quickly and this thing is just in the way. So definitely something to think about. And yeah, if these sort of ideas spark lots of sort of questions and things like that, or if you're looking for inspiration for specific encounters and things like that, definitely talk to other people, other DMs and things on the Discord server, or on the comments down below, or on the community chat, or Facebook, various other groups around the place. There's all sorts of groups on Facebook that you can join specific for particular settings. I'm a member of lots of groups on Facebook as well. There's Sages of Eberron and Toril and Earth, and yeah, there's lots of different groups there that you can join for sure. And yeah, definitely keep in mind that traps and other creatures that pop up during fights and things like that can have quite an influence on what it feels like for the players to be in that encounter. Like if they have an expectation at the start of the battle that things may pop into the fight, then you've got sort of free license to include things in there which may extend the fight unexpectedly halfway through. If they start the fight and they have no idea that something could happen and the fight could go on a hell of a lot longer, it can have quite a negative impact on their mood in the game. Give them an expectation that things can run out of control, and that essentially gives you license to do that sort of thing. They'll let you know that it's okay. Yeah, okay. There may be horrible minions that are released halfway through this fight. If there's cages of creatures here that may possibly pop open during the fight, we understand. It's okay. We know what we're getting into. So definitely things to keep in mind. Don't forget to check out the new merchandise on the Mighty Glue Stick store. I'll add a link at the end of this video, as well as a direct link to Chrono in the description down below, so you can check out the freshly discounted video game of the day. All proceeds go directly to my coffee fund, because these videos require my brain to go to strange and disturbing places. A sacrifice I'm willing to make for you, my friend, for the greater good. Please hit the like button if you hate this video. Hit the dislike button, or if you just hate me, why are you here? Go and do things with your life. Special thanks to the patrons of the channel, and they get 1 week advanced access to these vids with fewer ad breaks, and they get to request video content directly from me. And usually for these for the scripted videos, not these sort of bumbling ones that I'm just talking my way through, they get to read the scripts on Patreon as well. You can gain access to all of that for only $1 minimum per month, but you can pay what you want. It's completely under your control, and it certainly helps me out a lot. So thank you very much. I'll be bringing more famous figures, exotic locations, Dungeons & Dragons lore for you very soon. Thanks for listening, everybody.